Welcome back to Robyn Scherer Photography. Today we're going to touch on luminance to create creamy skin tones, and also I will touch on some cropping. So let's get into it. So I will start with this image here and I will reset it. So this is Sook, S-O-O-C, which means straight out of camera. And what I normally do is start with a preset I have either bought and tweaked to make my own or created on my own. Today we're going to use one that I've bought and tweaked to create my own from that foundation. So I normally like a very warm image. So this already looks pretty good to me. And what I will do next is start with my eyedropper, and I find a white or gray tone to check white balance. You can see from Sook to the eyedropper to check white balance, it didn't change a whole lot. I will warm it up using temperature, and I will increase the exposure. And then I will also use the eyedropper again to check skin tone. So again, with Caucasians, you're looking for the RGB numbers on the target to be 85, 75, or 65, or 75, 50, 65, 55. So either one of those will give you a correct reading on a creamy skin tone. So for her, she's at 83, 74, 64, which is just a couple points off from perfect. So I like how she's looking. I'm going to leave it there. I will note, I have other videos talking about skin tones and the numbers and how to use them to create creamy skin tones and for the different ethnicities. So if you want to check that out, it can be very helpful for getting your grip or getting a handle on skin tones and how to start to eyeball it and be able to know the numbers without using the eyedropper. I will say I do use the eyedropper quite often. So we are at a skin tone that I feel good about. We will move into cropping. I will touch on that. So when I use the cropping tool, I will normally choose an 8x10 rule of thirds. Here, if you're on a MacBook, you can use the X and it will rotate between portrait and landscape. It's just a quick little trick to switch it up and see if you like one better than the other. This particular pose, I will use portrait, and I'll actually make it a little bit larger to increase some of her arms. You can see her hands, as that was kind of the main idea of this pose. So I'm very happy with how this is looking so far. So let's talk about skin tones. I checked the numbers, I'm pretty happy with them. So I'm going to zoom in to 100, and I'm going to clean up any blemishes with my healing tool. With the healing tool, you can use this or the cloning. Cloning, you'll see, does a very exact replica. So you can see the spot here, and it picked up the exact skin tone of being in a little bit lighter area. This will give you an even better idea. But if I change that to healing, not cloning, you can see it's a lot more forgiving. Now you can't see it, as before with the clone you could. So I will use the healing tool on most of my blemishes. It is very rare that I'll use cloning on a blemish because you want it to blend in. You want it to be a gentle heal. You don't want it to be super noticeable. So I might zoom in a little bit more here on her chin, clean up a little bit here. And this, I believe, is a mole. Now, I will say, when I'm cleaning up skin, I will always clean up acne. I feel like if it heals naturally, you can clean it up. If it's a scar, I will tend to ask my subject or the parents, either or both, if it is a part of their story and if they want to keep it. So, but with acne, I feel like that'll heal on its own, so no one wants that in their picture. So I'm going to take that out. So from here, I'm going to do a skin smoothing. Now, again, I have another video talking about how to create your brushes. I have a whole toolbox. All of these are brushes I've created. They're for different things. They were for different subjects, but a constant I use is this skin smoothing Nick. That was actually from a different subject, but it just reminded me that that is normally how excessive I will do a skin smoothing, which means not excessive. You want it to still remain very natural. And so that is my specific brush that I know will give a very natural smoothing. So again, if you use your backslash, you can get the before, so Sook, and where you are now. And you just want to make sure that you are not doing anything crazy. So I would even clean that up just because I can, and it's a quick fix. And then from here, I will go in and use my brush that is specifically for making her eyes pop. It's called Sharp Eyes. Every now and then it's too bright, so we'll see how this goes. So that's a hair too bright. So another tip is you can come into exposure and use your up and down arrows to bring it down just little by little, very specifically. And a lot of times I find that easier than doing this. So if I double click it, it goes back to 0. If I go back to the 0 and then increase with my arrows, you can see like I can go high, low, and I'm thinking 20 is perfect. So I will leave it there. So from here, I'll clean up a little bit of her hairs with the healing tool. So I can go in here. Now here is the feather. Let me show you what I mean. See how the circle, the inner circle is very close to the outer circle? That's a very, very narrow feather. That means it's going to clean up almost everything in that circle. If you make the feather to 100%, the only thing it's going to work on is that inner circle. So depending on how close you want to get to the area, I will decrease the feathering. So for this, because I want to get close to the hair, I will make a more sharp healing tool. And then you want to keep an eye on, so you can see here the outline of the tool. So then I'll go back and increase the feather, and then I'll do a general broader sweep to bring in other parts of the picture. So that'll really smooth out what you're working on. So now you don't have the sharp lines. This is a little too sharp for me still, so I'll probably pop it out here, bring it over, and then this is where you're choosing what you want it to fill it with. So because it was a quite dark area, I'm going to choose something light with some bokeh to pop back in that area. So I'm liking that. So if we do the backslash, you can see where the hair was, and now it's gone. So we just cleaned it up a little bit. You can even zoom in, and that gets even more specific. So I'll use the healing tool here, and I'll remove that. And now backslash, and that just kind of melds in. So going back to the luminance, so we've kind of tidied up the whole image. So if we're talking about luminance, another thing you can do is go down here and use the luminance tool, and you're going to use the orange. So if you take it to the extremes, you can see what it's doing to your subject. So I'm going to double click it and bring it back to 0. So if I felt like she needed to be a hair just a little bit lighter, I would generally click this and use my up arrows and just see how it brightens her up. And then I would also go back and use my eyedropper and check my numbers again. So here's a mid-tone area. It says 86, 82, 75. I don't love those numbers, so I'm going to come back down here. And another set of numbers you can use for your subject is 90, 86, 76. So this is 90, 84, 79, so you're pretty close. But what that's saying to me is she's a hair too bright. So I can go back down to my luminance, and drop the number and even go make her a little bit more tan per se. Check my numbers again. We are back to almost 90, 83, 79. Those numbers are a bit closer to 90, 86, 76. If I go to another mid-tone area, then I'm still kind of off in my opinion. So I'm going to come back here to exposure, drop that exposure. You see how it really, taking it down a notch, just really lowered the image. So now we're back to 86, 78, 80, 75, which is closer to 86, 78, 68. Those numbers I'm happy with. So I will leave it there. And now backslash to go to the beginning to now. She might be a hair too warm. You can bring that down to shade. Again, as long as your numbers are adding up to the correct skin tone numbers, you can mess with the warmth. You just want to make sure that skin tone is creamy. So that's about spot on. So using the Luminance slider, that can help a lot with your skin tone. So if she was a little bit too tan, I can bring it up and you can see how that lightens her up. And if we go, she does have more of a fair skin tone because I know her and I did the shoot, so I know what her skin tone looked like. She's definitely more light, so I'd probably stick in that area. But that's how you can use the Luminance slider to adjust skin tone. And we talked about brushes and cropping, but mainly I wanted you to see how the Luminance slider works with skin tone. So with that, go ahead and click subscribe. I would love to have you watch the other videos. And if you'd like to see a video on something in particular, please reach out. I would be happy to create it for you. So with that, until next time, take care.